Welcome to Season 2 of the More You Know Media and Tech Literacy series, produced by IndependenThinker, LLC. The More You Know Media and Tech Literacy series is a quarterly educational initiative that helps individuals and communities better understand the realities of today's digital ecosystem. In Episode 5, we cover Why is AI so expensive now? We turn the mic to Tommy and Gina for an insightful discussion about this topic.
So I want you to imagine just for a second that you just moved into this incredible state-of-the-art, fully automated smart house.
Oh, nice. Living the dream.
Right, totally. I mean, it does absolutely everything for you. It anticipates your needs, it organizes your schedule, it runs your whole daily life with this just incredible efficiency. But, and obviously there's a massive catch built into the foundation of this house.
Okay, I'm waiting for the catch.
There is no fixed utility bill.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So every single time you ask the house to perform a task, whether that's just turning on a light in the kitchen or like drafting a complex business proposal for work, the meter spins. And the thing is, that spin might cost you a fraction of a penny or it might cost you $50.
Right, and the underlying anxiety of that scenario is that you have literally no way to forecast the expense. You only find out the true cost at the end of the month when the utility bill actually arrives.
Exactly. We're just flying blind. And that hidden reality, that unpredictable meter, is basically playing out across the entire corporate world right now with artificial intelligence.
It really is.
I mean, we all see AI taking over more complex workflows, but very few people are actually talking about the rapidly spiraling, fundamentally unpredictable costs of, actually powering all that compute. So our mission for this deep dive today is to unpack this hidden financial engine of the AI era.
Which is desperately needed, honestly.
Right. We are going to explore how compute costs are just completely breaking and reshaping traditional business models.
Yeah, because what's fascinating here is that we're looking at a fundamental structural shift in how businesses treat software.
Right.
For decades, software has always been a fixed cost.
Yeah.
You buy a seat license for a year and your employees use it as much as they want. It's predictable.
You pay your $50 a month and you're good?
Exactly. But now we are transitioning to AI as a metered utility. We are essentially treating intelligence as a raw material.
Okay, let's unpack this. How do you even run a business when you literally cannot predict what your basic tools will cost tomorrow?
It's the multi-million-dollar question.
To figure this out, we have a really great stack of sources guiding our analysis for you today. We're looking at a July 2026 investigative report from 404 Media, which leaked some crazy internal data regarding corporate AI spending.
That report is wild.
It really is. We're also examining a panel transcript from the advertising trade magazine Digiday, and we're analyzing that through the specific lens of a media and tech literacy series by IndependenThinker, LLC. Plus, we'll be digging into some highly specific case studies of how major brands are, attempting to navigate this whole financial unpredictability.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Let's start with the mechanics, because understanding the corporate panic here really requires understanding how the billing actually works in the first place.
Right.
The Digiday panel spends a lot of time on this idea of the token economy.
Right, tokens.
From their breakdown, a token isn't like an arcade coin. It's essentially a fragment of data. It could be a syllable, a piece of code, or just a punctuation mark. But they highlight this really stark difference in pricing between input tokens and output tokens.
Yeah, there's a huge gap there.
So why does the AI charge so much more for the response than the prompt? Like, why is the output so expensive?
It really comes down to how the models process the data. Processing your input tokens, so the prompt you provide, is a relatively efficient task.
Okay.
The model reads that data largely in parallel to establish the context of what you're asking. But generating the output tokens, that is an autoregressive process.
Autoregressive meaning?
Meaning the model basically has to calculate the probability of the very next fragment, generate it, append it to the growing text, and then recalculate the entire sequence all over again just to predict the following fragment.
Wow, so it's constantly reevaluated.
Exactly. Generating a net new response requires vastly more computational heavy lifting than simply reading the instructions you gave it.
It sounds like getting into a taxi, but the meter runs faster depending on how hard the driver has to think about the route.
That is a perfect analogy, actually.
So if I ask ChatGPT for a standard, email template or a recipe, the computation is fairly straightforward because the probability path is well-worn.
Right, it's cheap.
But if I ask a newer model, like, say, Claude Code or Claude 4.6, to analyze a massive data set and build a custom financial model from scratch, the computational weight of predicting those complex, novel outputs is just much, much heavier.
That is the core dynamic. And, it introduces a really fascinating paradox into the current evolution of AI.
A paradox how?
Well, on a per-token basis, the raw cost is actually dropping. Data centers are getting much more efficient, but total spending is exploding
Wait, how does that work? If the per token price is down, why are bills up?
because the newer models are designed to use exponentially more tokens to arrive at an answer.
Oh, I see.
The Digiday source actually highlights this, specifically with Claude 4.6 and its use of what they call sub-agents. It's not just one model answering a prompt anymore.
Right. It's a whole team of them.
Yeah. When you query Claude 4.6 for a complex task, it often spawns multiple sub-agents behind the scenes.
Like little AI assistants.
Exactly. One agent might be tasked with researching market trends, another is busy analyzing your internal data, and a third is drafting the actual strategy.
Okay, that sounds super helpful, but
But these agents have to communicate with each other. They debate the best approach before presenting you with a final answer.
and I'm assuming every single time one of those sub-agents communicates with another, they have to reread the entire context window of the conversation to stay on track.
That is exactly the hidden multiplier.
Yeah.
Every time that context is passed back and forth between the agents, the input token count just compounds massively.
So the meter is just spinning out of control in the background.
Right. You are getting a highly refined, deeply reasoned output, absolutely. But you are paying a massive premium in compute costs for the AI to, quote-unquote, think that thoroughly behind the scenes.
Which naturally leads us to the 404 media leak. Because this compounding math you're talking about is causing absolute chaos for corporate finance teams right now.
Oh, it's a nightmare for them.
According to this July 2026 report, major tech giants, we're talking Amazon, Adobe, Atlassian, CitySat, they are all actively throttling their own employees' AI use.
Yeah, they're stepping in and saying, stop.
They are intervening to stop workers from using the most powerful models because the costs have just become completely detached from their operating budgets.
And the leaked data points from that 404 report really illustrate the severity of this metered utility model. I mean, one unnamed company saw their internal AI spending triple to over $15 million in a single month.
Okay, wait, stop. How does a company even hit a $15 million bill in 30 days?
I know, it sounds impossible.
That can't just be like human employees writing overly long prompts, right? There's no way.
No, it rarely is human error alone. The massive spikes usually happen when these models are integrated into automated workflows.
Ah, automation.
Right. So say a developer hooks an LLM onto an automated script to parse some data, and that script hits a logic error. The AI doesn't necessarily just stop and throw an error code like traditional software.
What does it do?
It might try to resolve the error itself, fail, and then loop back to try again.
Oh, no.
Yeah. If an autonomous agent gets stuck in an infinite loop over a weekend, just making thousands of API calls a minute with maximum context windows.
Just racking up tokens.
Exactly. You can burn through millions of dollars in compute before anyone even checks the dashboard on Monday morning.
That is terrifying. The structural risk there is just enormous. And the report even mentions that Adobe actually ended unlimited access to Claude for its workforce.
Which is saying something.
A company that literally builds the infrastructure for digital creativity had to physically cut off its own employees' access just to stop the token burn.
Yeah, they had to pull the plug.
But, okay, if companies like Amazon and Adobe, who essentially run the cloud computing infrastructure of the entire internet, are hitting the panic button and begging employees to use weaker models to save cash, how on earth is a mid-sized ad agency or just a regular brand supposed to survive this?
The report calls it the token-pocalypse.
Token-pocalypse. That is bleak. It seems like an existential threat to any company with tighter margins.
It definitely is. But the advertising industry actually provides a pretty fascinating testing ground for a solution to this.
No, really. How so?
Primarily because advertising agencies are historically very accustomed to managing volatile inventory pricing.
Okay, that makes sense.
The Digiday panel reveals that ad agencies are beginning to treat AI compute costs the same way they treat, well, television commercial slots.
Oh, that is super interesting because the Coca-Cola case study from that same Digiday source really puts the sheer scale of this into perspective.
Oh yeah, the Coke campaign is wild.
Right. So for their 2025 Christmas campaign, Coca-Cola didn't just generate a few AI commercials, they generated 70,000 unique AI video clips
70,000.
just to blanket every possible demographic and platform.
And the sheer volume of creative assets there fundamentally alters how a campaign budget is even structured.
Totally.
Yeah.
The math on the compute alone is super revealing here. They used Google's VO 3.1 model. The baseline cost was 40 cents per second for standard resolution. But to get a 10-second clip in 4K, it cost them $6 per clip in raw rendering power.
Just for the render.
Right. So multiply that 6 by $70,000 finalized clips, and the compute cost just to render the final assets was $420,000.
That is a massive compute bill.
And that doesn't even account for all the clips they generated and threw away just to get those 70,000 usable ones.
Which is a crucial point, right? While $420,000 in compute might technically replace the traditional costs of, location scouting, catering, celebrity talent.
Sure, all the physical production stuff.
You are simply shifting the budget from human logistics to server power,
Right.
but the rendering is just the baseline cost. Because the Digiday panel introduces another layer of variable expense that they call the agentic tax.
The agentic tech. Okay, so this isn't just the cost of making the video, it's the cost of distributing it.
Exactly. It is the cost of the underlying automation. In modern programmatic advertising, you have AI agents representing the brand, negotiating in real time with publisher AI agents to buy the actual ad space.
Wait, AI is negotiating with other AIs?
Yes. And the panel estimates there is roughly a $3 transaction tax in pure compute costs just for these AIs to negotiate and finalize a placement.
$3 per transaction.
Yep.
Across a campaign of 70,000 videos
Yeah.
being placed across thousands of digital publishers. That is, the variable cost roulette there is staggering.
It really is.
You could never accurately forecast your quarterly marketing spend if your underlying distribution mechanism constantly fluctuates just based on how hard your AI had to negotiate that morning.
No, it's impossible.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that extreme unpredictability is exactly why the advertising industry is turning to a model they already understand perfectly, the upfronts.
The TV upfronts.
Right. In television, brands buy inventory in bulk, months in advance, to lock in guaranteed pricing. They do it to avoid risking the spot market during a major event.
So the agencies are applying that exact TV upfront playbook to server compute.
Exactly.
They are going to companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google, and they're buying massive reservoirs of tokens through these bulk enterprise deals.
Yeah, you lock it in early.
The agency secures a volume discount, locks in the price, and then they assume the variable cost risk on behalf of their clients.
Right, the agency effectively transitions into a compute broker.
Wow.
But by assuming that risk, they have to fundamentally restructure how they charge for their actual services.
Because they can't just bill by the hour anymore. The Digiday transcript actually includes a very direct quote from Wesley Terhar at S4 Capital's Monks.
What does he say?
He states flat out that, quote, "The billable hour does not allow for any meaningful innovation," end quote.
That's a bold claim.
Because of this shift, agencies are abandoning the billable hour entirely in favor of flat subscription models. So a brand pays a set monthly fee, and the agency delivers the strategy, the creative, and they just absorb all the AI compute costs internally.
And the driving force behind that subscription model is what the industry calls the pass-through problem.
Which is?
Clients absolutely hate pass-through costs. They do not want variable AI costs passed directly to their balance sheets.
Right. If you were a chief marketing officer, you don't want your finance department having to audit a 50-page digital water bill just to figure out if your ad agency used, like, Gemini 3.1 Pro or Claude 4.6 to brainstorm a banner ad.
Exactly. They don't care. They just want the product.
You want a predictable expense for a predictable deliverable. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, if I'm a client paying a flat $100,000 a month subscription, the agency now has a massive financial incentive to use the absolute cheapest, least capable AI model behind the scenes to do the work.
Yes, they do.
If they can just route all my requests through some low-cost open source model instead of the premium model they pitched me on in the meeting, they just pocket the difference as pure profit margin.
You have identified the core conflict of interest in this entire new model. It is a form of AI arbitrage.
Arbitrage.
Yeah. The client believes they are paying for top-tier reasoning and high-fidelity generation, but the invisible mechanics of the workflow might be optimized entirely for the agency's profit margins rather than for the actual quality of the output.
It's basically like going to a high-end restaurant, paying a premium for wild-caught salmon, and the kitchen just serves you farm-raised tilapia.
That's exactly it.
You paid for the premium sourcing, but the restaurant quietly substituted a cheaper raw material to boost their bottom line. And because the client can't see the kitchen, or in this case, the API logs, they have absolutely no idea.
They're completely in the dark, and the advertising industry actually has a deep, pre-existing framework for this specific ethical dilemma.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is known as principal media.
Ah, yes. The Digiday source dives heavily into the drama surrounding this. So, historically, principal media is when an agency buys traditional inventory like physical billboards or digital display space in massive bulk at a really deep discount.
Right.
The agency takes actual ownership of that space, and then they resell it to their own clients at an undisclosed markup.
And you can see why it creates a massive structural trust issue.
Totally.
A client has to sit there and wonder, is the agency recommending this specific billboard because it is genuinely the most effective placement for my campaign, or simply because the agency already owns it and needs to offload the inventory at a profit?
Right. It's a huge conflict. And we are seeing this exact controversy mapped directly onto AI compute.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, WPP's CEO, Brian Loser, is actively out there defending principal media, arguing that it's this growing part of the business and something clients actually want because it keeps their upfront costs down.
But that's only half the story.
Right, because simultaneously, WPP is facing a high-profile whistleblower lawsuit from a former executive, Richard Foster, over these exact opaque trading practices.
Yeah, it's getting messy.
The ethical lines around buying and marking up physical billboards are already fiercely contested. So applying that same opaque trading model to invisible fractional API tokens seems like a recipe for a massive transparency crisis.
It really is. The tension here is that the entire subscription model relies entirely on trust.
And if that trust breaks?
Well, if a client becomes suspicious of arbitrage and demands log-level transparency, meaning they want a full audit of every single token spent and which specific model was used for every single task, it completely destroys the simplicity that made the subscription model appealing in the first place.
You're back to auditing the water bill.
Exactly. You lose all the efficiency.
Which brings us to arguably the most uncomfortable question of this entire deep dive.
I think I know where you're going with this.
With the spiraling costs, the massive $15 million corporate bills, the opaque arbitrage strategies, is the integration of this technology actually delivering a return on investment?
It's the elephant in the room.
Because the Digiday source includes a rather brutal assessment from Publicis CEO Arthur Sudun. He states that AI is expensive, it's difficult to scale across an enterprise, and currently, quote, fails to deliver measurable value in 95% of cases.
95%.
A 95% failure rate for a technology that literally requires you to restructure your entire financial model is a really tough pill to swallow.
It is a very sobering metric, and it really speaks to the friction of deployment right now.
What do you mean by friction?
Well, many enterprises are paying these bleeding-edge compute costs for incredibly complex models, right?
Right.
But the integration into their systems is so poor that the AI is ultimately relegated to functioning as, like, a very expensive spell checker or just an internal search engine.
They aren't actually using its full potential.
Exactly. The value isn't failing because the models aren't capable. The value is failing because the enterprise workflows just haven't adapted to leverage them efficiently.
So the models are totally capable of doing complex calculus, but they are essentially being asked to solve basic arithmetic, and the client is still paying the calculus rate.
Precisely. However, the Digiday source does provide a counterweight to that 95% failure rate.
Okay, some good news.
Yeah, through the Butler-Till experiment.
Yeah.
This case study is great because it highlights where the actual value lies when the implementation is very tightly controlled.
Right, the Butler-Till agency. They dedicated an 8-person team specifically to test AI planning agents. And their goal wasn't just this vague idea of innovation. It was highly targeted.
Very specific.
They wanted to see if they could reduce the costs associated with executing a media plan by 40%.
And that specificity is the key to their success. They didn't just point the AI at their entire creative process and hope for the best.
Right.
They focused it purely on the routine, highly structured data tasks involved in media execution. Things like mapping spreadsheets, pulling historical performance data, and generating standard RFPs.
So really define parameters.
Sure.
And if you can definitively prove a 40% reduction in the human labor and time required to execute those routine tasks, well, the upfront token bill suddenly looks like a highly efficient investment rather than a runaway liability.
Exactly. We really have to view that 95% failure rate and the 40% execution savings as two sides of a very messy transition phase.
That makes sense.
AI is undeniably embedding itself into the foundational workflows of modern business. There's no going back. But the actual return on investment is currently locked in this tug-of-war with unpredictable compute costs and the sheer challenge of workflow integration.
So synthesizing everything we've pulled from 404 Media and Digiday today, we have really traced a clear line from the micro to the macro.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by looking at how the AI meters its processing power token by token and why generating complex output demands so much expensive compute. We scaled that up to see how those mechanics generate staggering $15 million corporate bills, which is forcing tech giants to throttle their own teams.
It still blows my mind.
Right. And finally, we examine how this extreme financial unpredictability is forcing entire industries to basically restructure how they price their services, shifting away from billable hours to flat subscription models that carry these inherent risks of hidden arbitrage.
So for anyone listening to this, whether you are managing a marketing team, running your own small business, or simply trying to understand the economic realities of the digital platforms you use every day, the essential takeaway here is that you need to update your mental model.
How so?
AI is not a software upgrade that you pay for once and just forget about. It is a raw, metered material.
Like electricity.
Exactly. Accessing it requires deliberate budgeting, and integrating it requires a really strategic understanding of when that steep compute cost is actually justified by the output you're getting.
Which brings us right back to the smart house we envisioned at the start of the deep dive. The automation is incredible and the capabilities are constantly expanding, but the meter is always running, and the pricing is entirely out of your control.
It's a bit unsettling when you look at it that way.
It really is. And I want to leave you with a final thought to just kind of mull over as this technology continues to scale and evolve.
Lay it on us.
If raw intelligence, the actual ability to reason, analyze, and generate creative work is becoming a metered utility subject to market fluctuations, what happens to the small businesses, the independent researchers, and the individual creators?
That is the real worry.
Right. When demand surges and the cost of tokens inevitably spikes, who simply gets priced out of the grid? We are moving toward a reality where the ability to innovate may be dictated entirely by who can actually afford to keep the meter running.
Sobering thought.
It really is. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the hidden mechanics of our digital world, and we'll catch you next time.
For more episodes related to media, social media, tech, and privacy, visit our YouTube channel, Independent Thinker LLC.